Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very tired guest in Paul Cottrell. He just got done a class at Harvard, or just turned in a paper. I'm not quite sure. Which was it, Paul?
I turned in a milestone for a research paper.
A
It's on
milestone.
the TAT pro. Yeah, it's a TAT. It's using the TAT protein to quiet the pro-inflammatory response of Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Well, we're all very familiar with Guillain-Barré syndrome, but we want to talk about the coronavirus tonight. And this is a short coronavirus update. And to touch base with Paul Cottrell, we're going to link you to his YouTube channel. He's also over at thestudioreykjavik.com, so check out his website. But tonight we want to talk about the coronavirus, general safety for the public out there. Oh my God, that's David Dubine. And basically, before we start the show, I want to tell everyone that there's 3 simple ways that you can prevent the spread of this type of disease. That's to disinfect surfaces around your home and work. All the handles and doors and things you touch. Do it every day if you can. Wash your hands every time you encounter strangers or unknown people or even known people for at least 20 seconds. And don't sneeze or cough around buildings or public areas. Do it into your cuff or the corner of your sleeve. Or stay home if you're sick, period. Do you have any words of wisdom, Paul?
Well, I had to actually get for medical school. I have to do a whole background check and fingerprinting. So when I went to the fingerprint place, everyone that's going through the building, you have to check in at the lobby. They force you to use the Perel before you even handle anything.
Use the
They give you
Perel.
the
Do it
Perel
now.
bottle, and and then you're using it. You use your hand, and then you start signing in and everything. But there is we're starting to get into this cleanse cleanse regime. Just everyday experience in New York now.
Let me tell
But
you what.
the
Let me tell you what Leah did tonight.
yeah, go ahead.
We mixed up some hand sanitizers, some disinfectants. We have some N1 thieves oil cleaner or whatever. So we came home tonight. We're like, let's just start a protocol where we clean all the surfaces that we use every day when we come in and out. And she said, while you cook dinner, because I was cooking dinner tonight, she was going to go do that. About an hour later, she came back and she's like, this is not going to work out. Because what she realized was how many surfaces there are that we touch every day. Door handles, both sides. We have like 35 doors in our house, including closets, in and out of the garage door openers. I mean, doorbell ringers. Think about all the cabinets and drawers and knobs. We have like hundreds in every dresser. It's hard to keep up with. So the best thing and what we learned tonight was before you enter the house, sanitize that doorknob and go directly in and wash your hands, shed your clothes, and put on some fresh clothes or take a shower before you touch anything else. And that way you'll need less sanitizing of
That's true.
surfaces. Yeah, go ahead.
If you could get one of those industrialized misters and you put it in that silver nano, liquid silver nano, it'll mist that whole room. And it'll start
the problem that
neutralizing
we're
pathogens.
Is we're trying to have a baby, and like 99% of all this stuff is bad for people that are pregnant. So there's no like aerosols or any of that. But let's talk about some crazy stuff going on. Because I went out today, and I've been going out every day to check on how the supplies are doing in my town. And in just a 24-hour period, what we now are seeing today is that there are major blocks of the supermarket that are being bought out. All the pasta, we talked about this earlier in my area, but you had confirmed that in your area, but we're going to get to that. All the pasta, all the sauces, all the cleaners, anything alcohol-based. There is absolutely no toilet paper, napkins, tissue, or paper products at all in our city at any store. None. And when it gets put on the shelf,
rice and beans also.
At 6 a.m. when the paper products get put on the shelf, they're gone in 30 minutes. Rice and beans are getting low here. and there's no flour, sugar, uh, and other baking products. There's still canning material. So what are you seeing in New York?
I'm seeing the same thing. The rice and beans are going. Um, the things that we normally buy are starting to run out. And, we try to be, almost 100% organic. So it's getting to the point where, we're going to go to non-organic. But the panic is starting. And, we talked about this. There's these thresholds, psychological thresholds. And one psychological threshold, anything under 100 confirmed cases in the United States, don't worry about it. Once you pass that 100 mark, then people start to perk up a little bit. But once you pass the 1,000 mark, then people start to get worried for their own situation. Pandemonium is going to happen once we hit 10,000. I mean, it's really going to get bad.
Well, what I see, Paul, is a strategic and purposeful withholding of the testing equipment and or testing directly from the CDC or the FDC, because it will incite panic.
Yeah.
And so they want to keep these numbers creeping up as slow as possible. I went over a statistical analysis with a friend of mine earlier, and we were looking at the numbers worldwide because there's lots of information now, country by country. And what we uncovered was there's probably over an 85% fraud in the confirmed cases based on non-testing, lack of testing, and lack of information to the general public. The CDC and other groups, the World Health Organization, could be telling the people what's actually happening, but they want to stop panic. But I think that if they told the truth, now this is my opinion, if they actually said there's hundreds of thousands of more cases than we're reporting, and what that means is the death rate is much lower, that would actually calm people down. But why aren't they doing that, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, I can just say anecdotally, I totally agree with you on what you're saying, that the data, there's some fraud going on. It's not reported in real time, and there's a suppression of information. But anecdotally, the guy that actually...
You just cut out when you said actually. So we're going to shake your picture around until you come back. And we're going to show David Dubine in the meantime. He's like Genghis Khan. Yeah, you're back.
All right. So, okay. So when I was having my fingerprints done, the guy was talking about how freaked out he was and all the things that he's doing to try to prevent him and his employees from getting COVID-19. So I think a lot of people are starting to, to get really concerned about germs, and they're starting to freak out. There is a deep worry out there. And I think part of the worry is when they're not prepared, and the other part of the worry is they're not really informed.
Well,
I mean, the guy, even though he was being super conscientious of hygiene, he still thought that it was just a minor case of the flu. And I'm like going, dude, you have no idea what's going on, do you? And here's a more important point, though. They've been talking about the test kits and bringing them to the United States kind of late, across the United States late. But no one is talking about testing for RATG13 strain. There's the Wuhan strain and the RATG13. And no one has proven to me yet that those test kits can test for both, because they are different genomes.
Of course. And so it's anyone's
guess. And I'm willing to bet they only test for one.
Yeah.
Will only test for one. They'll show they're negative, and they have, let's say they're testing for Wuhan. They don't test for RATG13, and they get their RATG13 positive.
Well, what we can both conclude at this point is that even after it's all said and done, even if there's a recycle, if there's a secondary resurgence, if this lasts a year, the numbers in the end are going to be completely false. They're not going to represent the reality of who is actually infected and the actual death rates. which is excellent news because the current death rates approach 7%, as low as 0.5 or 0.2%. So somewhere in that mid range is the average. Let's say it's 2% currently.
Did you see?
The actual death rate's probably going to be 1%, which is still, if we're talking millions of cases, 1% death rate is still 10 times as deadly as any of the current flus or other diseases that are currently circulating the planet. So this is much more serious. It's 10 times more serious than the flu, and the flu is pretty serious if you're sick or infirmed, right? Correct?
Right, exactly. No, I totally agree with you. Now, to prove your point, Wall Street, it was New York Times published something today, and they stated this, and these are sobering numbers. In the United States, assuming that the containment procedures don't work, okay, that's a big assumption, but let's just assume that the containment procedures do not work. They believe, they published this today, they believe that 160 to 214 million Americans will be infected with COVID-19, and that they estimate 1.7 million people will die from it. That's pretty sobering numbers, and that's coming right out of New York Times.
Yeah, that would be.
Now, I think it's a higher number, but
yeah, that would be 10 times the flu rate, and I would agree that that's probably a pretty good assessment. That's not in the extreme, and it's not minimizing it. It's right dead center, as they say, dead nuts. I think that's probably where it's going to fall. Now, scenes like I'm showing below are coming from New Mexico. There are actually people going to these box stores, and then they don't find any toilet paper there. They don't find any hand sanitizer, and they don't know what. Then they go to the next thing. So what I've seen develop in the last 24 hours in my region, and you saw it yesterday as well, is that they're now going to the snowstorm regimen. And so what I found in my supermarket was there was not a single gallon of milk. There was 2.5 gallons left of lactose-free organic milk. I picked that up as fast as I could. There's no milk. The dairy is getting hit. There's still tons of butter and eggs, but the bread is being hit. So it's as if this is the biggest snowstorm to ever hit in history. And I just want to comment on that because I think that there's a lot of people pissed off that they can't get toilet paper or food right now. But that's their fault, because had they watched reliable sources of news over the past several years, everyone should know they should have a month or two supplies backed up in case anything happens. What if there was a solar flare and your power goes out for months? You could literally be 8 weeks with nothing. So you need a few months of water and food just to hedge your bet. And if you have that, like Leah and I always keep like 80 or 90 rolls of toilet paper, and we keep restocking it because we have these 4 giant things. So that's why we didn't have to run out and buy anything, because we have 120 weeks worth of shit paper on hand. And we're willing to give it out to our neighbors if they need it, but everyone should have this or some.
Here's the reality. Here's the reality of the situation. Back in the olden days, they didn't have all this paper. They had washcloths that they reused, and they just kept on. So it's not like people can't wipe their butt with a washcloth and then wash it and clean it. It's just we've been socially trained to use paper. But we may be reusing towels and old washcloths to wipe our butts,
which is fine as long as you wash them off.
Yeah,
and you
exactly. Right after it's used, you have to go and clean it. But but that's how the olden days. That's how they did it in the olden days before toilet paper.
All right, let's get you to bed, Paul, and let's talk about some of the esoteric things going on. Bill Gates stepped down from Microsoft, as well as who else, you told me?
It was Iger from Disney.
Iger from Disney. And these guys are old. Now, I was just, take a look. Can you see the picture of Bill Gates right here?
Yeah.
He looks about 73, in my opinion. And I just found out that the guy is 65. That is that's the worst looking 65-year-old guy I've ever seen.
Yeah, he does look old.
So he's probably scared to
Yeah.
death that he's going to
Well,
catch the Wu flu and go bye bye. So he's like, and you and I also discussed. Plus, he can cash in on all of his stocks before they hit the shitter,
mhm,
and these guys are
mhm.
pulling out because of fear, and that's amazing because Bill
When
Gates
you're
has been building
exactly.
fear for decades with the whole vaccine nonsense, and I really hope that the Wu flu hits these schmucks.
Well, I think honestly that event 201 is really going to damage his reputation after everything's said and done. People are going to look at him and he's going to be vilified just like George Soros. You know how George Soros, was kind of like this,
Yeah, so during
ultimate
Occupy,
globalist that,
we
that.
had all the pictures of Soros. He's like Satan and he's taking over the world. So
Mhm,
that's really he's really bad press for Bill Gates.
mhm. Yeah, I think that there's a Soros-esque thing going on with Bill Gates now.
Yeah, because first of
And
all, Bill
I
Gates
when you
is not going to
when
be
you
able to
yeah, go
save the
ahead.
world with his vaccine. He doesn't have any COVID-19 vaccines. It's going to take a year to develop. And the people that are going to develop it first have nothing to do with Bill Gates because they're going to actually do very quick genetic science, create a vaccine, and try to sell it to different governments. So Bill Gates is now out of the picture. There are so many biotech corporations that are faster than this 65-year-old scaredy cat who's got billions of dollars.
Hmm.
He's well behind the curve now. He's falling away.
Hmm. Hmm. No, I agree. I agree with that. I think Iger and him, left their posts so they don't have to be constrained on what they can sell. And when you're on a board or you're a CEO, you have to declare what you sell in terms of stock. When you're a private citizen, you don't have to do that.
Now let's real quick change subject and talk about the miraculous recovery. It happened at
Hmm.
3:30 Eastern time, which was about 1:30 when President Trump was giving his talk here. And the markets recovered. They went from 21,815 to close at 20. That's a 1900. That was a huge spike. It was almost a 1,600 point gain in the last hour. And in our previous discussion, almost I think a week or two ago, before this even hit the fan, you discussed, and I agreed with you, the drop down of the markets and how it's a stair step. It falls dramatically for a while and then it recovers. And then it falls even more dramatically and then it comes back. And at each talking point, the media gloms on how, oh, it's all fine and it's recovered. Look at this. Everything's, and then boom, the next day. There is no rally. And this is a bear market. And it goes down and down in steps. And the public is
Hmm.
deceived by these outbursts of success in the market because they really don't have maybe a huge portfolio and they're not really following the market. They don't have a financial planner and they don't have time to watch what's going on. So, what are your thoughts on the 1900 point? This is the largest gain since the 80s in a single day. And I also saw the crypto markets reach a bottom today
This
and
is not
recover. And
right.
but the precious metals are still tanking. Silver is down below 15. It's at 1475. Gold has, I believe, fallen below the 1600 level. Don't quote me on that. But what are your thoughts on the markets as we move forward?
Well, you got to remember that um, a lot of contracts, swap contracts, behind the scenes, and how banks do things, they happen every 2 weeks within the month. So this is near a closing for some of those swap contracts. So you want to kind of, in some cases, you want to kind of have this artificial value of something that those swap contracts are underlined to. You follow me? So this is kind of an artificial. This is an artificial rally. And not only that, Kramer said, sell into the rally. Sell it, not buy into the rally, sell it. So this thing here is, a dead cat bounce.
Yeah. So
But there's some artificial things happening. Plus, it's at the end of the week, where if you're a short seller, you want to close your position at the end of the month, at the end of the week, so you can start a new round of short selling on Monday.
Let me explain,
because you're borrowing shares
to the mainstream what's going on. I've been watching the markets for 2 decades. I started day trading in the late 80s. I lost my shorts in several huge downturns where I was too drunk to wake up, and I lost all my money. But what happens at the end of the week, especially on Fridays, it's easy to have a rally at the end of the day on a Friday, because what's really going to happen is what you planned for Monday, which is what Paul just said. So they want a false narrative to get people to buy in at a high price because they know it's about to tank. And this is the manipulation of the markets that's been going on for decades. I still have hundreds of thousands of shares of Life Alert, Life Design Station International, which was a stock that is being used for this direct purpose. I guarantee that if I go look at that stock, that it probably surged today by 50 to 100%, because they put their money in safe holdings where they're going to rip it out and show a gain, and it's all manipulation of the market. Can you speak to how Forex is shorted or longed in these times, and how the SEC is maybe trying to kind of rein that in?
You cut out. Say that again. The Forex what?
Yeah, is the SEC is trying to rein it in some way because they know this is going on.
Well, I mean, when I was trading a lot of Forex, I mean, I used to trade like 17 or 18 currencies at one time. I had a pretty complex strategy, algorithmic strategy. And that was when it was 400 times leverage. And now they, and then they brought it down to 50 times leverage or 20 times leverage. Those were the wild times, right after Lehman. But the currency that I look at as a risk currency to kind of gauge where things are going is the USD yen. That's the Japanese yen. And at the height of the sell-off recently, it went down to all the way to 101. All right. And this little rally for the last 2 days, the last 2 day rally, it went back up to, I think it was 106. But the point here is that you can see it in the currency markets, and you can see it definitely in the stock market. But when you have a chaotic system and it's going out of disequilibrium, you're going to have these wild swings in the market where it's a big sell-off and a big rally, a big sell-off, a big rally, until it starts to get into equilibrium again. So, just because you see a big rally, don't assume that that you can extrapolate that as it's going to be, times are going to be good. When you have a big gap down, like we had mid this week or early this week, I forgot when the gap down was. Maybe it was Tuesday. But when you have a big gap down from the last candle, and then the next day there's a huge gap and then another candle, that almost always that point of gap, you start a new Fibonacci retracement. So there is going to be a whole slew of dynamics keep on going downward before we start to retrace back up to the 38% retracement line.
Yeah. And
so, I mean, I know this sounds a lot of complicated stuff here, but I mean, the point I'm making is that this is not going to, this does not mean reverting back.
The Fibonacci cap down is going to continue until the bottom. And the bottom that I looked at earlier was at 17.5. And we're sitting in and around, we're still in the high, where are we? 23,000. So that could be a full adjustment of another 20%, 18%. And so, and it's going to be, ebbs and flows. It's going to be like recovery. Is it really the recovery? But if you see any remarkable recoveries like this with a huge uptick after a big drop down where it stays flat all day, this is a telling sign that it's fake. This is a fake recovery that's simply so that
Yeah.
the investors can pull something out of there on Monday. And this thing is going to fall like a puppy. And so everyone should learn how to look at the pre-market data Sunday night, and you can see how the market is faring before the open. But I would have all my money in bonds.
Well, I mean,
what would you
it
do
depends.
right now?
It's right.
Buy
Well, it depends
precious
on what type
metals
of it.
and get it in
For
bonds.
well, I mean, if you're the average investor where you're saving for your retirement, I highly, and most people have it either in an IRA or a 401k. You can, in most IRAs, you can hold cash. I would sell stock and I'd hold it in cash. Now, in some 401ks, you can't hold it in cash. It has to be in a money market. I would sell the stocks, all of them, and you would hold it in a money market. You can keep your bond part of your portfolio. I don't think I think if anything, bonds will probably rally in this. But stocks, you're gonna get hurt if you try to trade it. And if you're in a 401k, you're restricted on how many trades you can do. You can't like day trade a 401k, and you get penalized for rebalancing all the time. So, for most people, it's best to just be out of the stock market and just hold it in a money market or cash. And then once things start to settle down, and you'll know when it settles down, it's going to be around the 1750 mark. But once you start seeing that people are healing, people are going back to work, restaurants are starting to open up again, the food shortages aren't there anymore, then you can start putting your money back to work. But I would wait. This is not something that you want to try to trade into. You're going to get hurt because we are probably seeing a resetting of the financial system in the United States. And I think that we're going to actually move towards a cashless society. This is going to create such havoc in the banking system that they're going to use COVID-19 as a reason to decash the society and lock all your money into the banking system.
Yeah, so
because there's a certain amount of the money supply that's outside of the banking system.
You're looking at the 5-year graph here, and what Paul and I are saying is simply, you can look at it right here. Here's an 18,145 down late in 2016. This is a hold. This is a platform, and then it jumps up here to 1788. This is the 17.5 platform. So if we see it go down to 17.5, it's going to have to hold there strong. This is like a 10-year trend. I mean, this is a hard line. But in the same 5-year graph, you could see a fall here below 15.9, which is typical. You could see a 2% or a 3% annually, which happens for a number of reasons. But if we see it fall below 17.5 in the next few months, this is a complete get out and into cash immediately because
meltdown.
Yeah, it's a meltdown.
You're right.
And I think that the state of affairs globally is that people are so jittery with nothing on the shelves. But here's the good news, Paul, that this type of panic buying hasn't been seen for generations. But what I'm hearing from manufacturers, especially in the U.S., as far as toilet paper, is that they have plenty of supply. It just takes time to get there. So at some point in the next week or two, all the people that have been hoarding toilet paper, everyone will have toilet paper. And then at some point, there's going to be a glut, and there will be tons of toilet paper in just a few weeks. So that's the good news,
Right.
As well as other supplies. They will be coming back to the market, and hopefully your butt will be clean. So as we close up tonight.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. As we close up
But
tonight.
wait, let me just add one thing. Do you remember? Wait. Let me hold on. Let me just add one thing.
Go ahead.
But do you remember the oil embargo of the 70s? and the long lines. Yeah. So
I
that
was
was
a
kind of
kid.
like the closest thing that we,
Cigarettes were
yeah,
65 cents a pack, and you could only get 10 gallons.
yeah, so that was the closest thing that I can remember in my life to something like this. And what we're experiencing right now is way worse than the oil embargo.
Well, I think it's better in a number of senses. Gas is going to get really cheap. People are going to learn how to be more hygienic, and the markets are going to reset to a more reasonable level. Now, the recovery process from this event could send the markets into a more ridiculous pattern. It's anyone's guess how we go from here, because the whole purpose of this and the way that it's being unrolled through governments is so that they have maximum benefit. There is no catastrophe that is going to be wasted by the people at the top. So what are your thoughts on how they're going to use this event so that they can capitalize and we lose?
Well, I think that they're going to roll out different elements of this Biopatriot Act that we were talking about. One element is the decashing component, where the banks are going to have more control of the money supply and you'll lose control. I'm very scared about forced vaccinations with that messenger RNA platform. Um, and they may use this as as a as a means to say, well, COVID or COVID-19, it's COVID-20, it's COVID-21, it's COVID-22, and every year you're getting a vaccine for it.
I already
It's
thought of that,
crazy.
and I
It's almost
thought,
like they programmed it.
yeah, that this virus may be programmed to mutate annually so that it could be. Why would they name it COVID-19 if they're not preparing for a COVID-20 and a COVID-21 and a COVID-22?
Exactly.
Exactly. They're all
Exactly.
patented, and each new corporation gets its new piece of the pie, controlled by the globalists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, so you're going to have big pharma, and the biotech companies making money. You'll have the banks controlling more of the money supply. You'll have less, biological freedoms with the Biopatriot Act, and who knows what else? Probably a social scoring. You'll need you're going to need a system that can prove that you've been vaccinated. So there's going to be a surveillance. So it adds to the already uber surveillance that we've had since 9/11. Everyone is, what the sad thing is people are going to allow this social scoring to take place, and they're going to use that social scoring as a way to to force you to do these things. If you don't get your vaccine shot, you're not going to be able to go to school, or you're not going to be able to go get a job, or you won't get a mortgage or whatever. You kind of see this already happening in China. China's beta testing what we're going to be getting.
Well, look, if the governments don't bail us out, humanity, if they don't stop mortgages, if they don't stop financial pressures as far as paying taxes during this pandemic, then what we will be left with is millions of foreclosed homes, tens of millions of homeless people, and the pandemic will pale in comparison to the humanitarian deficit worldwide. So I think that it might roll out in a way different way, where we're actually going to help the citizens, because those that are elected are going to be held accountable, hopefully. But at the same time, they're going to squeeze all of our constitutional rights and make us comply. So while they give the handouts and we all feel like we're safe
Mm-hmm.
and wanted, our civil liberties are going to be stripped from us one by one as we comply to the new rules. So this is a word of warning to the masses. I think that world governments are going to try to make this as comfortable as possible for the people. And they already did this in Italy. They stopped all mortgage payments, rent payments. You don't have to do this, that. The president announced today that there's no more student loan payments, or they're going to defer all that. And more of this is coming in the days to come as the numbers swell. So as the numbers swell and the public panics, the supplies will come back in the stores. People will get confidence as the markets tank and the dollar falls short. The confidence will be adjusted by supplies coming in, maybe, and people being quelled into a sense of security that there are things being done. But in the end, we're going to lose because our civil liberties will eventually be stripped slowly, one by one, as the globalists. Uh, and it's basically Agenda 21's perfect opportunity. Now, it's now Agenda 2030. But before we close up, Paul, because it's past your bedtime, let's talk about Agenda 2030 and what they may be rolling out in the coming weeks.
Well, I mean, part of Agenda 30 is what they call One Health, One World Health. And in that, I mean, I'm already seeing advertisements, little vignettes on Bloomberg, on some of their, advertisements, where, they're pushing this idea that we need because the world is so integrated that it makes more sense in their eyes that we have a health organization that is run by the UN that all nations, follow under. And I'm against that. I'm totally, I'm a more of a constitutionalist, a localist, not a globalist. So I don't believe in a one world government. They're going to try to roll out a 2030 or 2021, agenda. But they're definitely going to try to integrate a one world health into this whole crisis. But what's on our side, the ones that don't believe in a one world government, is that the WHO, the World Health Organization, fell flat on their face on managing this, and it was very self evident. It's very axiomatic. So it's hard for them to have any street cred saying that they could manage one world health when they couldn't even manage the correct data coming out of China, or be factual when the crisis was starting in Wuhan. So I just, hopefully, people will wake up and not buy into it. And hopefully we'll have, some people in Congress that, still carry a gun, that are saying we're not going to have, 2030 in the United States. There's some senators and representatives out there that are, very, pro-Constitution and very pro-states' rights and stuff like that. There are others that are, more uber government, one world government oriented. I think Nancy Pelosi is one world government type. But Senator Kennedy is not. I don't think Senator Cruz is either. So there are definitely senators out there that are, very pro-American and anti-world government.
I do agree with you on all those talking points, but we can both agree to disagree on the fact that the numbers we're looking at now are completely fake. Now, what the good news is that in first world non-communist countries, and since the outbreak has leveled off in communist China, that the numbers we're getting today are probably a little better. And the pandemic is not over. It's just beginning. And if you come to worldometers and you just take a look at the graphs, they've just become vertical. So we have a few weeks ahead, and this is going to get very bad very quickly. And this is with extremely limited testing, folks. So what we're talking about is that as these numbers go vertical, almost no one that actually has the disease is going to be tested. That is how much of a problem this is worldwide. Now, luckily, it's not a problem for people's health in general, because the majority of the millions of people that will be infected by this will not die. They will lose most of the value in their 401ks. They will probably not be able to wipe their ass with toilet paper if they didn't buy it already. They will have a shortage of supply of fresh foods and other dry goods. But in the long run, they won't die. Unfortunately, there are hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of infirmed and elderly worldwide that will succumb to this pandemic. And those are the people that
Mhm.
Paul Cottrell and Diamond and all of our listeners can help save by not visiting them in the near future. If you think you're sick, even if you don't think you're sick, distance yourself from your loved ones. You can always Skype them, call them on a phone. Let's go back to the old ways and let's start washing our hands more often and being smart about how we move around and the people that we come in contact with. This is only beginning and it may level off. There is tons of evidence, and I've been sharing this because I've been going over this data for hours. And there is evidence worldwide that's suggesting that this is reaching a crescendo in certain areas where the outbreak has occurred, which could mean many good things. That this is actually leveling off in some areas, and that in just 2 to 4 weeks in the United States, it may reach a peak and level off. Now, the peak, we might be told, is only 80,000 people in the America that were infected, but we will know it's more like 800,000, and we will probably be able to extrapolate a real death rate. But this is much more serious than the cold. It's much more serious than the flu. And based on the current data we have, it affects elderly and infirm people. And we need to be safe and consider this very serious. Paul, what are your final words?
Well, like I, always say, please help your neighbor if you can. I like the idea that, because everything is probably somewhat asymptomatically infected, not to see your elderly, your mothers or your grandmothers, for a little while. It's almost biblical in a sense that if we just stayed away and stayed in our homes for 40 days and 40 nights, if everyone did that, not that everyone would, but if everyone did that for 40 days and 40 nights and just stayed at their home, this probably would go away really quick. But people won't because we have to make sure that the economy keeps on rolling around and, people are going to work and doing their thing. But they don't realize that by trying to save the economy, instead of, being self-quarantined for 40 days and 40 nights, they'll actually do more damage to the economy than just being, in their home for 40 days. So we'll see, but I like the idea that just Skype your loved ones until we get past the big peak of this.
Well, maybe this
The
is a
question is
lesson.
what happens with the secondary and tertiary.
Yeah, maybe this is a lesson for humanity because what this means and what you've said, I almost have little tingles up my back, is that what we need to think in the future, moving forward, if we're actually an advanced society that learns from its mistakes, is that we have to react and provide locally. If we were all locally provided through manufacture, banking, and local systems of food, there would be no worries. We would have local food production. We would have local medical systems. We would locally be able to quarantine our own areas. We would be locally responsible for the local population and not have to outsource all of our drugs, all of our meds, all of our toilet paper to China, which is a communist country. Therein lies the problem. The systems that are set up, the types of foods that we eat that have been deplorably put in place by the governments worldwide that you think are there to help you, we should all pause and we should think about the ramifications of what we have done to the world, to ourselves, and the safety of the people we love. The most important thing
Exactly. I
is
mean,
your family. It has nothing to do with communist China. Yet we rely on that country to supply our family with the necessary medicines and products that keep us safe and healthy every day. That is absolutely ridiculous.
globalization has eroded the social contract of our citizenry. And hopefully people will wake up and move towards localization instead of globalization. And some of the senators, even Senator Rubio just 2 days ago, they had a hearing talking about this very subject, that our national security is at risk because of this Wild West concept of globalization, and that anything went and everything, could go to just China. And we're starting to realize that was a very fragile thing that we've done for the last 30 years.
Than that, Paul. I mean, it's way worse than that. Because what I'm seeing develop in the last 24 to 36 hours, well, let's go 48 hours ago. China's official ministry was sending out fake information that the U.S. created this virus, and that in the last 24 hours, China is saying that they will not supply the U.S. with necessary antiviral drugs that they manufacture, which, in my opinion, is a declaration of war. What's your opinion?
Definitely. No, I agree. I mean, if they're holding back on medicines that we need because they don't like something, it should be a wake-up call, that the president, his emergent part of his emergency act today should have been a call that we're bringing back all manufacturing of pharmaceuticals in the United States. That China will not be making any, But I do think, I've thought this for a long time, and I think Steve Bannon believes it too. By 2025, we're probably going to have a confrontation with China in the Pacific Ocean. Hopefully the United States maintains their hegemonic power in the region. I don't know if we will or will not. I don't know if we have the fortitude in the citizenry to maintain, a sustained confrontation with China. Well, we just don't know. And the Israelis do not like this one belt road going through the Middle East. And I know that for a fact, because behind the scenes, I've talked to people that are tied to the Israeli intelligentsia, and they are very concerned about what's going on. So I think the Five Eyes that we were talking about, me a couple weeks back, the Five Eyes are moving on the CCP because of these encroachments that President Xi has been doing with the island chains and the one belt road.
Yeah, so we have to watch very closely how it develops in the coming days. We have called them out on this, and we'll see how the negotiations go, but it's anyone's guess. And as far as globalism is concerned, I can see World War III developing from a new global cabal that's Europe, the UK, America, maybe Canada, that fights back because they don't get the necessary medicines. If these types of infarctions occur, we can deny them food staples because there is definitely a give and take on these borders. Now, we are in the midst of a glut in imports and exports because of this pandemic. So we're really setting up a debacle for starvation and hardships worldwide if it really unfolds like this. But I think these are topics we need to discuss it.
There's an echo of the Great Depression leading to World War II in this kind of situation. There's hardship, and then all of a sudden, there's the financial crisis, and then this march to war. I kind of see that. This is kind of the 1929 moment. Lehman wasn't the 1929 moment. The geopolitical landscape was different when Lehman happened. But this type of scenario, this echoes more like 1929, and the rising of a new power. Instead of the Nazis, it's now the CCP. And I don't know what happens. You know, the United States has a tendency, they survive these world wars because they're late to the party. You know, Britain, you know, almost lost because they were early to the party. If we engage China at the very beginning of what we call World War III, we may be diminished. It's a serious issue, but I'm sure, we could, talk about it later, on other shows, because it's a pretty deep topic. But there is a potentiality of 5 years after this event that we see a confrontation between China and the United States, and the overall Five Eyes, if you want to call them the allies.
Well,
the question is where does China, where does Russia play into this?
If
Is Russia going to be with the Five Eyes, or are they going to?
And if I can remember the year that I couldn't wipe my ass and grandma died, I would sign up for that conflict.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the question is, where's Russia going to be on this? Are they going to be with the Five Eyes, or are they going to align themselves with China?
Whatever's
I think
more
that's the
convenient.
big rub.
It's whatever's more convenient at the
I
time.
think that we've missed. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Well, Paul Cottrell, it's been a pleasure talking to you. You can find Paul at the Studio Reykjavik. We'll leave you links below. He's on YouTube at the Paul Cottrell channel. And Paul, you have enough supplies? Are you feeling safe in Manhattan? What's going on there as far as shutdowns?
Well, I mean, we have enough supplies in terms of food. We kind of stored a little bit 2-3 weeks ago, but because the panic is starting to show itself on the streets and at the stores now in Manhattan, much more than it was 2 weeks ago, I purchased some storable stuff now that I never did before. It was so I'm starting to get a little bit more anxiety with what's going on. Who knows what happens though? It wouldn't surprise me that this weekend or by next weekend there is some sort of quarantining of Manhattan or New York City at large. We already have 154 cases that are confirmed, in New York City.
That's probably 154,000
So I mean, that's a lot.
in my opinion. There is no testing.
Well, maybe it could be
whatsoever.
Yeah, right. But I just
80% of the cases are asymptomatic or mild, so people just think they got a sore throat or whatever. So this is the most deceptive and most opportunistic thing that could happen to corrupt governments worldwide. Do you agree?
I mean, there's no place definitely. There's no place in the United States that has many confirmed cases as New York City right now. New York State has more confirmed cases than Washington. What is surprising, though?
568.
Well, this morning, I'm going off of this morning's numbers.
Yeah, 568.
New York was 421, and
421.
Washington was 420.
421 in New York.
420. Okay, so Washington. All right, so Washington Washington and New York's been going back and forth with who's the lead. But what's surprising is what's California at right now?
282.
Yeah, see, they seem to be understated. I mean, they were the first seed centers.
They're not.
I was always expecting that the breakouts would start.
They're not testing.
Yeah, see, there's the problem.
Yeah.
So once they start testing, it's going to balloon out, and everyone's going to get freaked out, and there won't be anything left in the stores.
No,
Nothing.
The shift. Now's the time to prepare.
Exactly.
Go buy whatever's left in the store. Go now. Do it now, just in case. The worst case scenario is you have extra food that you want to eat. Don't buy shit you don't want to eat. Buy food you're going to eat. I keep telling that to people. They're buying things they've never bought before. Go into the store and buy what you need. Here are some tips. You can buy all the milk on the shelf that's fresh, and you can vacuum seal it and freeze it for up to 6 months. It's fine. You can freeze a number of things. Fresh fruits and vegetables, if you blanch them, they'll last for a year. So buy the fresh fruits and vegetables, cook them for a few minutes, vacuum seal them, and put them in your box freezer. You can do that with milk. You can do that with butter. You can do that with almost anything if you vacuum seal it. It'll last for up to a year and be completely edible and fine. Stop panicking and start preparing. You
That
walk into the
I didn't
supermarket
even think of
calm
doing the vacuum
and
sealing. I
yes,
didn't.
go
I
ahead.
never thought about doing the vacuum sealing for milk. That's a great idea, actually. That's a
Yeah,
good tip,
yeah,
actually. Most people wouldn't think of that.
no, and they don't know about it. And we went out and looked for powdered milk today, and there is none. So you can just buy fresh milk, freeze it, and if you thaw it within 2 months from the vacuum seal, it's the same as fresh milk. From 2 to 6 months, it starts to change a little, but it's perfect in cooking and coffee and everything else.
Mm, hmm That's good. That's good. That's a good tip.
All right, Paul, it's a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon and be safe out there. And we'll give you 10 seconds to say your
Thank
goodbyes.
well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
We love you. Be safe.
Bye bye.